for today's session, the second session of embedding evidence use. I think at this moment, I'd like to welcome everyone who has managed to join at this point. For those who managed to also join yesterday, welcome back. And even those who were not able to join in the yesterday's session, also I welcome you to this session. And I hope that you managed to, go through the videos and the materials from yesterday's session. And I'm looking forward to some lively discussions today. So welcome to Embedding Evidence Use 2.0, which is a carryover from yesterday, where we got to hear about, the amazing work that is happening in the UK, in Uganda, Burkina, and Brazil. We learned about the work, we learned about, ingraining of evidence use, as our Uganda colleagues who put it. And I think, however, this is, not without its challenges. So today, I think we'll not only reflect on yesterday's discussion in terms of the challenges that are faced in efforts to try and embed evidence use, but we will also get a chance to learn about, the EIDM work that is happening in South Africa, the successes as well as, also those challenges. Then we will also aim to, discuss these challenges faced holistically from all these different country experiences. And furthermore, we'll also explore the strategies that are used to overcome these challenges, and also look into, how we can collaborate and support each other in these efforts to embed evidence use. So essentially, the main objective of today's session is firstly to enhance understanding of the challenges in embedding evidence use in and outside the government, and also secondly, to share the experiences and develop ideas to address these challenges faced when we're carrying out these efforts to try and embed evidence use. And then thirdly, to enhance collaborative engagements amongst the partners in terms of co-creating solutions and joint problem solving in embedding evidence use. So in terms of the structure of the session, firstly, we'll have a hard warmer. Andile Mandronzela would lead this session. And then secondly, we'll have a recap and a presentation by Lawrence in terms of EIDM efforts in South Africa. And then followed by the breakout sessions, where we'll be with the several facilitators. Will be allocated into different groups. Each group is its own facilitator from the ACE team, and they will have guiding questions to lead the discussions in the breakout sessions. And then after that, we'll come back and try to sort of synthesize these key challenges, the strategies, and also the collaborative engagements that we can explore to support each other in that regard. So without wasting any more time, at this moment I'll hand over to Andile, who will start with a session, networking session, and then I'll take it from there, and then we can proceed with the session. Over to you, Andile.
Thank you so much, Promise. Hello, everybody. Like Promise said, my name is Andile, and I am with the ACE team. And today I'd really like us to create a memory together, right? So a fake memory together. So I'll start off a memory, and everyone will add on to what they remember from that particular day. So you can add whatever you want to add. For example, I'd say, guys, do you remember when you went to the zoo? And someone else can say, yeah, and we saw the monkeys that were dancing, and someone else can say, yeah, and it was raining ice creams, and the next person can just add on to that memory, and we'll all agree that that memory happened and it is our memory, right? So this memory does not have to be realistic. So if you saw aliens, that's just what you saw. So you can mention aliens, unicorns, dragons, or whatever really. You can describe the weather or the activities that we did, the clothes that someone else was wearing or you were wearing, or maybe the people that we saw on that day, or animals also that we saw on that particular day. And then I will start off the memory, right? And then I will call on someone else to add to what they remember from that day. And then that person will also pick anyone really from the participants list, and that particular person will just add, and that is how we will create this memory of ours. Do you have any questions, maybe? Points of clarity, going once, going twice? Okay, I hope everyone is ready to unmute themselves, so just add to the memory when your name is called out. Okay, so I'll start off the memory. Guys, do you remember when we went to space? Kululeka, what do you remember from that day?
I remember that day. It was a wonderful day. It was raining fire trucks, and I'm glad that no one died on that day. Janine, do you remember anything in particular about that day?
I do remember that day. Those fire trucks were really scary, but what was more scary is that we were eating biryani that was so spicy. Denise, what do you remember about that day?
Janine, I do remember that day. I remember the biryani was very spicy, but alongside the biryani, I also drank some lemonade with it, and it was really good. How about you, Kavita? Do you remember anything in addition?
Yeah, the lemonade really cut some of that spice level. I do remember that. Plus, it was the first time that I got to know Daniel really well. And we were walking there on that sort of asteroid belt going along. It was really cool. Daniel, what about you?
Yeah, I remember we were traveling that asteroid and that it was very cool. And I remember that we saw, this is very hard for to improvise in English. So I remember that we saw Promise passing by in a fancy car.
I do remember, you know, not me. It was, I think, after having, you know, lots and lots of wine, and then I decided, oh, what can I do here? I'm yearning for some wisdom, so I invited my favorite professor, Professor Sandy, for just a stroll outside there in our own asteroid, away from everyone. What do you remember about the discussions that we had, Prof. Sandy? She's muted.
Yeah, I remember it very clearly, but I couldn't concentrate on any discussions. It was very exciting riding in such a fancy car, but I was amazed at the view. I suddenly realized I didn't have to worry about having a head for heights up there. So I could wave down and I could see, through a telescope, I could see Zafir.
Yep, I was far away, closer to the food. I was really worried of not missing out on some biryani, to be fair. But yeah, I was really thinking of joining Promise and Sandy, and I just remember talking to Sabit about how good the view is and how worried we are that the fire trucks are going to damage our homes. What else did we talk about, Sabit?
We've forgotten. We need to make a montage for Benny Leibowitz bar mitzvah, okay?
For when?
For tomorrow. Huh?
Oh.
I remember Sabit being there, but I think he was really busy because his minister needed him to do something very urgently, and then he had to, you know, he came a little later, so maybe he's got a chance to. He came in at the end only, and because for me, really, what I remember, lots of wine. I remember Promise's fancy car, and definitely the spicy biryani. Like, who did that biryani actually? Like, I can't remember who put the spices in there. Abiba, was it you?
Hello, colleagues. Sorry, I'm joining you late. Hi, everybody. Sorry for not joining you earlier. And I heard that, I think you are talking about the previous experience of ours in Addis.
No, we're actually creating a fake memory of a day that we are actually creating right now. So whatever, we're creating a fake memory, and in that memory, we went to space and we were eating biryani, and someone was driving a car in space, and someone, so you can just add whatever you remember from that day. So it's just a fake memory that we are creating together.
Yeah, okay.
So what do you
That's
remember
great.
maybe from that day when we all went to space together?
Actually, I was so busy at that time, and I was going here and there.
That's what Lawrence said.
So
That's what Lawrence said.
It was funny. It was really funny, and I didn't enjoy it very well because I was busy. Later on, actually, I have enjoyed. In the beginning, it was tough. Yeah.
Okay, so you can pick on someone else to add to the memory that you just created. Who do you remember maybe from that memory?
I remember Sandy. We were talking in the corridor on the evidence synthesis issues personally, and in the palace we were also discussing a lot. I remember Sandy too, and also Nora. Lawrence, he stayed back and he was providing training for the other teams. So we were discussing a lot, actually. Yeah, it was a great time.
No, it really was a great time. I agree. And I know that Abiba and Laura both were there. So maybe Abiba, we can hear from your spices again. It would be really nice to hear what happened there.
Sure. So yeah, I'm not sure who put the spices in the biryani either. I drank the lemonade, but what I really remember are the mountains of ice cream. I remember Promise zipping in and around these mountains of like ice cream that were just basically like piled up in different spots on the ground. And we had our choice, like, you know, and it was so many options. Was it vanilla or strawberry or chocolate? And then I remember Laura running from mountain to mountain, trying to take a scoop of each. Laura, what do you remember from that day?
Well, I don't remember so much because I don't know if you tried that extraterrestrial drink that was a mix of the wine that Promise mentioned with some other gooey things that we found under the pile of ice cream. So I did try that, and my memory is kind of lost right now. But I think I saw Julie dancing with some creature, and I don't know if I invented that. Julie, can you confirm, please?
Julie, you're muted.
Thanks, Laura. I remember that so well. In fact, they were some alien friends that I'd encountered, and they loved to dance the jig and the mamba. So they were teaching me their dancing moves. And yeah, it was such an incredible day. What I remember about the ice cream mountains was the chocolate lava flowing between the mounds of ice cream mountains. I'm not sure who hasn't gone yet. Is it Xwan from China? Did you want to share a memory from that day? Because I think you were with me with the dancing aliens.
Xuan, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, Xuan. Do you have a memory of the day, maybe?
Otherwise, perhaps Mary Gloriose was there too.
Yes, I have really vague memories. I still actually, I'm still recuperating from that day. So I really have very vague memories of what happened. So actually any help would be useful to remember what did I do, what didn't I do? But I remember that it was so fuzzy, so help.
Such a beautiful memory just created together. Thank you so much to everyone for participating in this memory. And this is a memory that I hope we all hold together and we don't forget. Thank you so much. I will hand over the mic to Promise again.
And I think
Thank you
Andre
so
might
much.
have joined us too, if he just wanted to round out the memory.
Yeah. Andre, do you remember anything as a roundup?
No. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Andile, for leading this session wonderfully, and everyone for participating. That was a lovely, lovely memory. As you saw, I was laughing a lot. That was amazing. So I think the next step now, I will hand over to Lawrence, who will lead us in the next session of, the recap of session 1, and also reflections on embedding evidence use in South Africa. Over to you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Promise. And yeah, thank you for that memory. And I agree, I think we should add it to our theory of change, most certainly. And I hope there's many more rap memories coming. And as I think Sabit was already alluding to, we were even working on that particular day. So I'm afraid it's my responsibility to take us out of space and slightly back into the working world of embedding evidence use, which is, I suppose, equally exciting in some way or another. So I'll try to give you a bit of I suppose, complement to the experience you've heard from all of us met yesterday. And then I'll start us off with some quick reflection on the key learnings from yesterday that were already shared by R4D. And thanks so much for this brilliant summary. So I suppose I could say we're trying to nudge ourselves towards synthesizing a little bit. And so in that effort, I'll try to leave with a few notes. And then we have the small groups to continue the very rapid synthesis. And yeah, so let me bring you to South Africa. I think I really like the language of embedding evidence use. And I think in our context, we use institutionalizing kind of as a synonym for that. And that's just partly because that's the language that government is using themselves. So, and there's, I think, 4 key characteristics that I quickly wanted to touch base on to complement the amazing experiences we had yesterday. So the first one is around the center of government coordination, having a unit that coordinates the evidence space. The second one is around capacities for evidence use. The third one is systems and incentives for use, both kind of the carrots and the sticks, so the negative and positive incentives. And then lastly, the partnerships aspects in that use itself. And you probably will not be too surprised, and you might have seen on the first slide already, that lots of this work is driven by DPME. And you might be tired of us keep saying that because it's kind of our main client department, the Department of Planning, Monitoring, Evaluation. But they are really, I suppose, the institutional entity that drives evidence use in the country. So we can't talk institutionalizing without them. And I think it's a really nice mechanism in its own right, the question of what happens if you have a department that is located within the presidency, so fairly empowered, to drive the evidence space in the country. And so this is just, I think, a few quick thoughts on what was the advantage, or what is the advantage of having DPME in our administration, and how has it helped institutionalization in its own right. So DPME really has driven the space by bringing us an outcome-based approach to policy design and evaluation. So give me a second. So I want to quickly show you what that means in practice. So if we talk around an outcome, they've designed a couple of priority outcomes for the country, which you can see hopefully now on your screen. And for each of these priority areas, that's what government has to work towards, there's a really, really detailed log frame attached to it. So it's quite funny if you come from that kind of M&E background. So if I was going to click on here, the first priority, you're going to see I have a 50-page document that lists outcomes, indicators, baselines, targets, etc., interventions, and so forth, like a super massive, complex document in its own right. In each of these 7 areas, plus the cross-cutting area of gender and equity. So it is a really, really sophisticated tool to, from a top-down, drive where policy should be going, and then what that means for evidence needs. So having this outcome-based approach allows us to then define where's the evidence need and where should it come in. And this is, I think, the top-down structure And each outcome has its own facilitator, so an empowered senior public servant to drive this outcome in its own right and connect the evidence space linked to that outcomes. There's definitely a few challenges that I'll reflect on in a second, particularly around politics, but it's kind of the core institutional structure is this top-down outcome framework. And what follows from that then is that we also have a structure of different units within the government that's trying to understand what evidence needs do we have. So once there's a priority outcome, so education, they think about, well, what evidence do we need? And there's quite a few different types of evidence, as you can just see from this quick slide. So it's not even exhaustive. But then if we say we need evaluations in this space, or we need citizens data, or we need socioeconomic impact assessments, a new unit is being created across government to then create, to drive the creation and use of this evidence. So from the outcomes, we go to kind of an organizational structures with units for different types of evidence. And that, in a sense, creates the overall ecosystem in which we can operate. And it probably wasn't necessarily intended, but it drove a much bigger evidence system kind of at the back of it. So with these top-down structures asking for evidence, we then move very quickly also into the routine use of evidence and the formalizing of partnerships and arrangements, which I'll just talk a little bit more in a second now. So one thing that DPME also invested in massively is a capacity for evidence use across the public sector. And there's kind of 3 different entities that were done. So the first one is a course for senior decision makers, so only DGs and DDGs, which in South Africa, Director General and Deputy Director General, that has seen a massive take up. So it's run twice a year, and they have really, it's oversubscribed in advance. So massively uptake from the senior course on evidence-based policymaking. And then also a compulsory course for new entrants in the public sector. So kind of entry-level public servants. And interestingly, so that has not seen the same take-up, even though technically it's compulsory. And on top of that, a National School of Government has been mandated to formalize all these courses into overall curriculum. So quite a bit of investment in capacity. And also with handbooks, etc., that I will not go into detail. And then coming to the systems and incentives, the key system created is what we call the CS system, the Socioeconomic Impact Assessment System, which is a check through which each policy has to go by law. So any department proposing a policy needs to submit a CS. And in that CS, there's a specific section for what evidence was used when the CS was created. So the idea is that a department that wants a new policy to take place first needs to think through who will be affected and how by this policy. There's a very strong focus on the socioeconomic impacts. So it's not necessarily kind of, you might be familiar with the cost-benefit analysis of policies. It's really not that. It's much more on the socioeconomic side of it. And it has morphed quite a bit to an extent that the evidence has broadened to a much stronger angle. So initially the evidence was kind of an afterthought within the CS, and now it's become much more prominent, the latest iteration of it. It's kind of a 30-page document, and evidence is mentioned 116 times just on these 30 pages. And that gives quite a bit of an incentive to use evidence for departments. And actually, it's a bit of a stick, because technically speaking, if the CS hasn't been done properly, the department could be taken to court and the policy could be thrown out. There has not been a test case of that yet, but definitely it's been used as a threat for departments to reconsider their policies. And this is just to show kind of what comes at the back end. So once you have this top-down demand for evidence, different systems emerge. And this is just a quick template from one of the systems for rapid responses in one unit in particular. And because they got so many requests for evidence from departmental clients, they kind of developed a system how to deal with them. And this is not about the system itself, it's just to show how this top-down incentive has created a lot of knock-on effects that then drives the wider evidence ecosystem. And the last point is around partnerships and mandates. So I think fairly quickly we realized that as much as it's great to have this top-down structure within government, if the research sector doesn't come to the fore and support this, there's very little that can be actually achieved. And we had to look closely into establishing different models for partnerships. And I think particularly the co-production model, which you can see here on the next slide, has worked probably the best out of all of them to formalize an arrangement between academia and government to meet those evidence needs. And that then again, if you talk about the co-production, you can see it here in this slide, actually again becomes just a part of a bigger system. So having these incentives on the top really has led to different types of evidence entities emerge to meet this top-down demand. So this is South Africa. This is what we are kind of in the institutional context that we are working in. And just reflecting then quickly from yesterday, and thanks for the summary, it was really amazing. Well, what comes out, particularly on the strategies? So you heard about evidence champions, and that's something that definitely resonates with us here too. We're wondering sometimes, are these champions sustainable or are they being burned out? That might be a question to discuss. There was a point yesterday around continuous engagement and around partnerships, and we would throw in the co-production aspect. And that might be a continuum of different engagement methods. It's a question of who are we targeting in that, and does it matter if it's at a senior level or junior level? Yesterday, a point around patience came out, that we need to sometimes wait for institutionalization, and we very much would agree with that. I think you could say we waited almost 10 years before some of these parts of the system got going here. But how long can you wait before you should move on? And maybe sometimes you have missed an opportunity. We talked about seniority of leaders. We talked about leadership, mission, vision, and strategy for evidence-based policymaking. And we also talked about working with the grain. And I think this is a really interesting reflection for us, because the last 10 years in South Africa have been described as a lost decade due to corruption. But ironically, that was the time in which evidence-based policymaking has taken off the most. And so we have worked with the grain, and there's certainly a couple of actors who not necessarily rate that highly, that we worked for 10 years with an administration that has been not known for corruption. But this idea of working with the grain to affect change from within has served us well in that context, but it might not be the same for others. We talked around capacity, we talked around culture, particularly Laura, your lovely presentation, and we're wondering, is culture and institutionalization the same? Is a learning culture and an evidence culture the same, or are those different? And then I think lastly, how do you formalize all of that? We heard around protocols, we have heard about amazing three-pronged model, and we also heard about evidence to policy units. And then the question would be, where should those be located? Within government, outside government, or in between? So those are all food for thoughts that we hope to explore in the small group sessions. And then lastly, on the challenges, obviously institutionalization is nothing that comes easy. And I think we got this amazing list of challenges yesterday. Lots of these, 1 to 5, seem to focus on aspects that have to do with the supply of research. Is research relevant? Is it accessible? And then a follow-on question could be, well, what about the demand side challenges? And is it actually, whose responsibility is it to fix the supply side challenges? Is that government, or is this academia, or anybody in between? So I think lots of really interesting stuff that came out, and I really enjoyed yesterday, and I hope we can pick on this today and maybe move closer towards synthesis. And with that, Prof. Promise, I think I'll hand over back to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Lawrence, for the lovely presentation, for sharing with us the South African experience in terms of embedding evidence use, and also the reflections that you offered from yesterday's session. And also, I think I quite like the nice summary of the key challenges that emerged from yesterday, which, as I indicated earlier, is also one of the key objectives of today's session, is to synthesize these key set of challenges and also look into ways of addressing these challenges as well. So in light of time, I think it's at this moment that we have to move into our breakout sessions. 4 groups. There will be you'll be randomly allocated into any of these groups. Each and every one of these groups has got a note taker. There will be questions that will be guiding the discussion. They will take you through that process. And it's tailored around the key objectives that we want to achieve today, the challenges, the experiences, as well as collaborative engagements, or our ideas on how we can continuously support each other. I think, let me just confirm with the organizer some contributions there. So yeah, welcome back to the main room. it's time to move on to the next part of this session, which is basically putting our ideas together that we gathered from these breakout sessions. I think what I'll do, so before we move on, just to highlight quickly that we had to sort of like condense the teams a bit. So apologies for the movements that occurred earlier on when we moved into other groups. So I think I will, at this moment, ask Group 4 to share the insights that came from their sessions at this moment. Yeah.
Just to check from us, Group 4 is my team?
Yes.
Okay, super. Yeah, so I think generally there are quite a few interesting points. Sort of a lot of the discussion was basically, just around how different sort of in academia as well as policy making it can get. We sort of identified 3 different challenges, mainly the first one just not being part of the decision-making process and directly involved with it is really sort of tricky, and especially sort of seeing how different backgrounds of policymakers or the authorities in the administration sort of treat evidence and sort of react to it. I think the second challenge sort of touched on was just around the skepticism from it that can come from both sides. Experts, academic experts as well, like to tend to sometimes shape their work. And I think the last sort of challenge was touched on is just around connecting with other social sectors, how difficult it is sort of working with the different sectors within the environment of evidence, within the evidence ecosystem. There are significant barriers to work across them, especially like with regards to how academia in some contexts tend to sort of separate itself with the policy making, or at least the ministry side of things. Yeah, and I think that was basically most of the context. If I did miss anything, Sandy, Laura, Ismail, please feel free to sort of tip in.
Great. Thank you. I think, yeah, I think what I'll do now is I'll allow Group 3 to also sort of highlight the key themes in terms of the challenges that are faced in terms of embedding evidence use. Then we'll move on to Group 2, and then from there I can sort of like ask people to make some comments based on the key challenges that the groups would have highlighted. So Group 2, the key themes around the challenges that came out of the group.
I think Daniel would be a better place to give us just a general overview. Daniel?
I am Dior, but I don't have the notes that we took. But I think the challenges that we identify. One was related to the location of the unit within the institutions of the country and the way the country is institutionalized. Like I was making the case that for us in Colombia, it's a challenge to be located in a city that is not the capital city, in a national country. Colombia is a national country where things happen in Bogota, in the capital. I mean, that's where national policies are being made. And we are located in a university, a public university, which is not in the capital. It's in one of the regions or the provinces, and within the Faculty of Medicine. So that location of our unit, of our team, I guess it's a challenge for us to be able to embed embedded these ideas into the policymaking processes. I guess other units which are located within government structures have different challenges, but for us this one was one of the challenges. The other challenge that we identified or that we commented in our group was related to the capacity to the capacity of the team, to the skills that we have and that we have developed. And that's I guess in our case in Colombia, our skills are, since we are located in a faculty of medicine, we have and we work a lot with clinical epidemiologists. So we have a team that has a lot of skills on synthesis of evidence, on different type of synthesis of evidence, but we don't have a lot of skills on policy analysis, political analysis, systems analysis. So I think the capacity of the team is also, well, it's an opportunity, but it's also presented some challenges to be able to embed these ideas into policymaking processes. And the last one, the last challenge that I mentioned was, and it was related to something that Lawrence mentioned in his presentation about being patient. And I think our unit of evidence and deliberations is a very young unit, and we started with the REP project, and so I feel like it's gonna take some time to be able to embed these ideas into policymaking process at least at the regional level. At the regional level, the work that we have done, we've done it with the specific issues, policy issues with a specific policymaker, but it's not something that we do or that policymakers do on a regular basis. So I think that's going to take time, and I think that we are just starting with this process. So yeah, Andil, those were the challenges that we mentioned.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Group 3, and especially Daniel for sharing that. I think you highlight a very important point in terms of the challenge when you refer to the location where you're located, the political system, the institutional system, and how it's affecting embedding evidence use. So I'm looking forward to sort of like hearing more around how these challenges or this challenge can actually be addressed. I think at this moment I would also like to invite Group 2 to sort of provide what came out of their discussion in terms of the key challenges.
Kuli, do you mind giving us a quick summary?
Yeah, sure, I can jump in. So we were originally part of Group 1, but we had to join Group 2. Just to give a few of the key points that came out, there was talk about no structure being there in the ministry that links the evidence users and producers. I believe this was an issue that Sabit came up with. There was also issues of no knowledge brokers being within the government departments, the relevant government departments. There's also an issue of contextualization, in other words, foreign evidence sometimes being discredited, in other words, not being applicable to a particular context. And finally, there are our challenges. Evidence is shining and exciting, but then it has no clear results, and people are often disappointed by the lack of clear answers. So, oftentimes, I think this speaks to oftentimes being able to diagnose problems, but having a certain kind of frustration when you have to actually build solutions to them. Promise, just to make sure, am I only giving feedback on the challenges?
Yeah, at this point, yeah. Thanks so much for that. I just want us to maybe focus on the challenges now, so that at least when people don't get distracted, if we move to the strategies. So maybe just to invite any quick reflections on the challenges that have been shared so far. Perhaps maybe a challenge from one group that sort of like resonates with their own context. Yeah, so any quick reflections from the wider group? Yeah, I think as you try to sort of like think about those reflections, my own quick reflection is around the, the idea that that they came out of, group 2 around no clear results emerging from evidence use. I think that's a very important point in the sense that, just measuring evidence use and its impact is on its own can be, it's actually quite difficult. And I think it's something that would also be a point of discussion, going forward, how we can sort of like measure these results. So that was my quick reflection. Any other reflections from the wider team before we move on to perhaps the strategies? Yeah, no, at the moment. So now I think I'll go top down now to sort of focus on the strategies that that are emerging. Perhaps group 2, any strategies to overcome these challenges that that were highlighted?
Yeah, I'll just rifle through some again. Just focusing on the most important ones then. The issue of capacity building, of course, came up for evidence-informed policy making. This is for senior decision makers as well as the advisors. And there was also the notion that embedding works best if we start work at a lower to mid-level of decision making, but it does depend on the context. There are quite some interesting insights by Laura, especially on how Brazil is trying to change the whole top-down approach. So that was quite insightful. And finally, I believe this was another point raised by Sabit, that the unit for knowledge brokering or translation is in the Prime Minister. I think this, yeah, and then Lawrence added as well that it relates to South Africa as well. So I think those are the top 3 strategies that we kind of built together as a team. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Group 3, strategies to address the challenges that you highlighted, issue around institutional system, political system, the location.
Okay, so the strategies that we were able to write down was, the first one was that it would help if we have like a clear picture of different stakeholders, so who the users are and the producers as well. The second strategy was to have different people with different capacities within the team, because this will influence our approach. I think it was mentioned the issue of humanities versus science and stuff. And then the third strategy was to have continuous engagement with stakeholders and have evidence champions within different departments that we can easily link with. So those were the strategies that were identified.
Okay, great. Any quick reflection so far on what has been shared by group 2 and 3 before we give a chance to group 4? Quite aware that we're running out of time. Any quick reflections there as group 4 gets ready to make sort of highlight the strategies?
I think Promise, just an observation from my side as, more of an outsider. I think it's quite interesting to see that, as Lawrence mentioned in the chat, that capacity can either be seen as a solution or a constraint in itself. Still quite an interesting point. And the last one, I think, would be related to this point about, perhaps the structure of, kind of the way governments work also has quite a significant impact on how easy to use or how easy it is to institutionalize evidence as well. So on the issue of, perhaps using the lower to mid levels of decision making to implement decisions, I think that's also a very interesting way of approaching it.
Great, great. Yep, thank you so much. Group 4, you want to share your thoughts around the strategies to address the challenges?
Yeah, sure. I do want to sort of provide the caveat. There's a lot of sort of nuance that was involved in these conversations that was a bit tricky to sort of capture. But yeah, I think just similar to Group 2, I think one of the points was to build sort of capacity, and ensure decision makers as well as sort of researchers, that they understand the evidence and the way evidence is generally presented. I think that was one of the strategies, to make sure that it's packaged and visualized in a way that's easily sort of interpretable across levels of research, or just across levels of like familiarity as well. And I think the other point was just with regards to the skepticism, just from the research side as well as the decision maker side, is just to be to sort of look at your current system, work around the structure and see how to infiltrate it. I think Sandy gave the good point of how they've sort of approached it by using academia, and the moment you sort of get into academia, you get accepted within those spaces a lot easier, and sort of builds legitimacy on the processes involved for the evidence building. Yeah, I think for the most part that kind of covers it. But again, I do want to add that a lot of nuance is kind of missed. And yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for their contributions and sharing the key themes that came out in terms of the challenges and strategies. At this moment, I think I'll hand over to Kavita for the next exercise in terms of trying to, sort of like synthesize the key themes and strategies to embed evidence use.
Well, I just put them in a poll. I think that you're being overly generous here. So launch the poll is basically the next step.
Yeah.
So we're going to, you'll see a poll on your screen appear in just a second, and you'll be invited. It's a multiple choice poll. And this reflects, as Promise and Lawrence have worked to synthesize what was coming out of these different breakout groups and discussions.
And to the ACE team, in case you're frantically wanting to vote, I think as co-hosts, we're not allowed to vote, I'm afraid. To understand, I think we can't. So yeah, don't try, but it's really nice to see what's coming out.
If you would like the co-hosts to vote, we can try removing your co-host status.
No, don't worry at all. I was just making sure nobody panics.
Okay.
And is the idea for people to vote for as many things, as many challenges, or top 3 or top 4, or?
Yes, I think so, because I can't see how it's set up on my side. My apologies. So I think if you can vote for your top challenge or your top 3, that's ideal. But if you can rank them completely, Kavita, can you just clarify to me how you've set it up?
So there's no, you can't rank it, but there is an alphabet. It's a multiple choice. So I think you can, if you had your top 3, you could select 3 selections.
Thank you.
And I think okay, it looks like some of the votes are starting to roll in, but we're still waiting on a couple more. I know we have a second poll too, so promise, Lawrence, would you like me to end this one and go to the second?
Yeah, I think if I see the time correctly, we had this one open for 2 minutes on the challenges, and thanks so much for the results. Yeah, I think maybe let's give it 2 minutes for the strategies as well.
How I share the second poll.
It looks like we had a clear winner on the links between having a central government unit, which is quite interesting.
Sorry. Here. Okay, here come the strategies. Sorry. Okay, so 1 more minute to vote.
Apologies, I'd been kicked out for a second there.
Okay. So let's skip last 10 seconds. All right. I'm going to, anybody still? Okay, I'm going to end this one. We've got 8. Here come the results for you.
Perfect. Right. Yep. I think that brings us to the end of our poll. Let me take this opportunity to thank everyone for their contributions, for the presenters. I think the results of these polls will be shared with the wider team eventually by R4D. Yeah, I think, yeah, thank you so much. I'll open the floor for any final reflections, closing statements from the wider group.
I just wanted to say this. Of course, it's a busy week. Everyone is in midst of chaos, right? But these 2 sessions were really nice. The one yesterday, the one today, and I think it's really nice to learn a bit more about other countries' experiences and the similarities and differences in strategies. So it will be very welcome to see these results. And actually, if we can have these polls reopen for people who weren't able to join in, maybe we'll learn a little bit more, maybe even with an open field for people to put on their challenges and strategies. Because I understand we don't have many people from the team, the broader team here, right? But it was so nice, and I'm very thankful for everyone who was here, who helped get us here. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
I think maybe also from my side, just to express thanks for all the support from R4D. It's been absolutely outstanding. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Same. Thank you guys for organizing this. Any thoughts? Any last thoughts from you guys?
From us, a big thank you to the team from ACE for stepping in to lead this. Another fantastic conversation. Thank you to all of the country partners who are here today. And we really recognize that you're busy and really appreciate your contributions and the effort that you make to be here. So big thank you. There's a lot to think about, I think, that's emerged from both of these conversations. So we have a little bit of work to do to synthesize and figure out how to continue to carry this conversation forward. The hope is that this doesn't become, we don't just stop and start these conversations at these learning sessions, but we figure out how to continue to take them forward and to go deeper on these specific issues and challenges that were raised. So we're going to put our thinking hats on. We're going to work together with all of you to figure out how to kind of move these conversations forward in a concrete way and in a way that will allow us to really tackle some of these issues and challenges that have surfaced. So just a big final thank you from all of us.
Thank you. Pleasure.
And just one last point, like I like the idea, Laura, of opening this up to the wider group. So we'll figure out how to do that and make sure that we get voices from the other partners that weren't here today as well. So sorry, go ahead, Promise.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. I think this brings us to the end of this session. And I hope you enjoyed it. Looking forward to further engagements around this topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Absolute pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye,
Bye,
Sabi.
Sabi.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining.